So when I got the call, again, you're like, I was planning on going home. I was there for about a year. There was an opposition company to Carlos Colon. It was called AWF back then. It was, a lot of good names where, they would bring in names on weekends and stuff like that. They had money behind it for a while, and then money started to dry up, so it was time to leave. I get the call from Magnum TA. He tells me right off the bat, he goes, I don't know what name we're going to give you. It looks like, you look like Tom Zank. You're looking for a tag team partner for him.
Right.
So they flew me in. I did my first match against Dallas Page on TV when Dallas and Vinnie Vegas were putting us over every night. Every night. They were low card guys.
Right.
Until Bischoff started banging his wife, started banging Page's wife.
Right.
That's when Page got his big push, but that's besides the point for now. I'll get to that later.
You mentioned something about Dallas Page and Kimberly Page and Eric Bischoff.
Yeah, that was after, but it's true. I said, you know what? They all live behind, I know that the complex all the guys lived in was behind the main event, okay? And you know what? When everybody's telling you the same story, it's the same thing. Paige is pimping his wife out. When we were there, she was a shot girl at the Cheetah Club before she ever got in the business. And I mean, she was nice to me. They made a video on me and Zank, and they got the girl from the Cheetah to be in the video with us, okay? Right. So I mean, that was Kim's ties, but that's what it came down to. He started pimping her out, and his pushes just started coming right behind him.
Yeah.
So when everybody's telling you the same story, it's definitely true.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, probably someone that you'll say good things about. I don't know. Shane Douglas.
We on now?
Yeah.
Shane was. We broke in around the same time. Shane was never happy. Okay. Shane was the kind of guy when we were in WCW. He signed on about a month or two before I did. They put him with Steamboat. They were working all the main event tag teams. They had that 1 hour Iron Man challenge against Austin and Pillman. This guy was never happy. I mean, he was always one of these guys who's always politicking. I haven't seen Shane in a few years now, but he was never, ever happy. I mean, he wanted the same money as they got. The company laughed at him. He was on a nightly guarantee. That's what he agreed to get. That's what they gave him, okay? Personally, again, nothing against him personally. Always got along, but it was just, when you're around the guy, you just say to yourself, basically shut the hell up sooner or later. Never happy. They're in these long tag team matches in WCW, and all you do is hear him crying and bitching and complaining. Never happy. Goes WWE, they give him a character, do this, never happy. The money, and when you hear his side of the story, money was never good enough. The push was never good enough. Right. It's like, okay, Shane, here's 100,000. Well, I want 2. Oh, he got 2. You know what? I want 3. That's what it came up. Never, ever. I mean, to sum it up in one phrase or one sentence, man, it was never happy. Never will be. I mean, I don't know what his deal is with TNA. I don't know why he's not in the ring anymore. Maybe he just doesn't want to wrestle or can't wrestle. I don't know if he's taking indie bookings. If I seen him here again, a hug and a kiss, a big handshake. But for a guy he's definitely fell short of his mark in the business. He was always a solid worker. What was funny is my first pay-per-view, now I think about it, WCW, was myself, Shane, and Tom Zank. And it was in Philadelphia. This is at the height of the hardcore as ECW was growing against probably the 3 most popular heels. I mean, it was a kiss of death. It was Michael Hayes, Arn Anderson, and Bobby Eaton. Okay. Talk about, thank God I was only in the company for about a month and a half or 2 months.
Right.
To where they couldn't hate me yet.
Right.
They knew I was from Philly, so they gave me a little bit of slack. They just beat the hell out of Zank. And if anybody ever gets a chance to get that match on tape, you don't get the full effect from watching it. They had signs in the crowd. I'll never forget. About Shane, and when he was tag teams with Johnny Ace as the Dynamic Dudes.
Right.
Oh my God, brutal. I mean, I went over, they put me over in the match. I took it on Michael Hayes. But, and again, you talk about the height of ECW hatred, the fans' hatred for the baby faces. I will never forget it. But thank God, again, it was Shane, which was a whipping boy at the time, and Zank, which was a whipping boy. And I just thank God that I wasn't yet.
Right.
I never came back because at the time WCW was still mostly in the southern states. they just would pick some northern towns and do pay-per-views, but I never came back and did any house shows in Philadelphia or anything like that at WCW. But boy, I'll never forget that. It was unbelievable. Brutal.
How did things change in WCW when Watts was fired?
I think it was drastic. I mean, Dusty, it was almost like Dusty was pretty much calling the shots anyway.
Right.
I know Ole Anderson was involved, but it was quiet. And then when they had after I left was when like the figurehead guys came in. Can't remember the names. But it really wasn't that big. I mean, Dusty seemed like he was calling the shots all along.
Right.
You could see who his boys were, the Florida guys, the Wyndhams and guys like that, his son. You could just see how things were going to be. You knew what was going to happen before you even got to the building. You knew how high he was going to let certain guys get. And it's funny because he wanted to have his baby faces, but he would only let them get to a certain level because of Dustin. Okay? And, of course you had a couple on top, and just feel like Sting, Barry Windham, and Dustin, and everybody else was under mid-card almost, even guys like Scorpio when he came in doing all these fancy moves, and everybody loved him because of how flashy he was. He was one of the first high flyers in that style on national television. And again, he just squash them. He just eventually just squashed them. Just again, get you to a certain point and just start beating you. And beating to where, it's okay to be a heel, but when you're a baby face, it's nothing worse than a baby face losing on TV. Which is a part of my, and again, I'll get back to that. I'll reference back to that in the WWE part of the segment too.
Okay. How did your tenure with WCW come to an end?
We were on a cut list. They probably got rid of about, just like that part's always be the same. About a dozen of us. We mentioned the Wrecking Crew and guys like that. Rob Van Dam left with an injury, and he wasn't anywhere obviously near what he is today. He was just like an up-and-comer. And again, he still did all the same moves. It was just, we got a cut list to the point of, I never turned heel there, which is always would be good because you extend your stay. It was always kind of like, sit at home when you're not being used, collect a check, which was always fine, or be used and just go with the flow. Be on the house shows. You always had a place in the house. They always find a place for you in the house shows.
Right.
And then near the end, it was more like the last year was more in singles, and it wasn't too bad. It wasn't really any feuds, but it was like kind of just keeping, holding your own, being your first experience in the main federation, holding your own, doing what you had to do. And we were still more southern based, so we were doing more driving to the area towns and flying. It was still more southern based wrestling.
So after that happened, what were your career plans? What did you do?
The best part was whenever you leave a federation, your stock on the Indies goes through the roof.
Right.
Okay. So knowing you were leaving there, you had millions of promoters calling you, fly-ins, drive-ins, because I was always I was always the king of the Indies on the East Coast. To this day, I still keep very, very, very busy, and just doing the right thing. Staying in everybody's good graces, doing good business is what it comes down to, giving them a decent product. It wasn't that hard to leave there because again, you're kind of like it was stale. You kind of saw that you weren't going anywhere. Your time kind of came and went. You didn't leave on bad terms. You left on their notice. And it was just at that time 94, 95 was an unbelievable time on the Indies. I mean, I had months where I was wrestling 14, 15 times, and I have records to prove it. Where again, I write down, just your records, what you get paid, where you wrestle. I always kept track of all that stuff, even who I worked against. But the best part of it was, you're looking back, you're saying, 2 August, 2 years in a row, I had 16 shows. It was that busy. You're saying, Jesus Christ, that's more than half the month.
Yeah.
And it just, again, it was easy to handle. Other guys would leave, and they depending where you live, East Coast has always been an independent hotbed to where plenty of shows, it doesn't matter because then you're somebody. Then you go from being the small fish in the big pond, turning right back around and you're the big fish in the small pond.
Right.
You're the headliner. You're the semi-headliner. But everybody, the promoter, you're always the highest paid guy on the show.
Right.
To where, again, that's where I always carved out my niche. That's what's kept me in the business for 20 years is being, again, busy on the Indies, They're not where they are today, where they were, just because of a lot of things. I mean, wrestling was always at its peak when both companies were fighting each other on Monday night, and that was great. But again, it was one of those things where you kept a full schedule, and again, making nothing but money. Just plug it along, saying, okay, I did WCW, now it's time to focus in on WWE. In the meantime, I got a job in All Japan, actually as Johnny Ace's tag team partner, even though like over there, you're not like with that guy every night. They change up a lot. And it was all because Zank fucked up. They won again. I was following Zank's coattails. They wanted Zank. Zank had 3 strikes in All Japan. So they said, let's bring this guy that looks like him, was his partner in WCW. So I got 4 consecutive tours, which drove me crazy. I mean, I hated it. I mean, I'll be honest with you. It was nice to say you've been there.
Right.
You could keep it. These guys that make a living at. And Japan, now I don't think you see as many Americans going over as they were back, the Stan Hansen days, Steve Williams days, the Del Wilkes and Bobby Fulton days, and Kamala too. I can remember where everybody sat on the freaking bus, like it was just drilled into my mind.
Yeah.
Abdul the Butcher behind me, Steve Williams and John Nord on this side. Again, I had who else was there? I mean, it was a good, again, I don't think they bring out that many Americans to, now that all this league split. I don't follow as much what the name of the groups are. But that kind of filled in beside the indies between WCW and bridges between WWF.
Watch thousands of exclusive shoot interviews right now on TitleMatchNetwork.com.